back to the Gary Sutton Show, hour number 2 on a Tuesday morning here on WSBA. And we all have our eyes fixed on ISIS and the Middle East and what's going on in Saudi Arabia and Iran right now, all of which are very important. And yet at the same time, yesterday we heard about China's economic situation and how that's going to have an effect on us and on our country. But maybe they are doing other things as well that we ought not take our eye off the ball on. And Peter Brooks has been keeping his eye on China for a while right now. And in fact, he wrote a recent article back on December 23rd, China escalating the military buildup in the Boston Herald, and he joins us this morning here on the Gary Sutton Show. Peter Brooks, of course, is the senior fellow for the National Security Affairs at the Heritage Foundation. He's also a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense and a member of the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission and a good friend of this show. Good morning, Peter. How are you?
Good morning. Hey, I wanted to compliment you on your 1970s theme music there, that bump music. Where'd you get that?
Hey, stop it.
Serious. Man, I felt like I was transported back to the 1970s.
Every now and then we put those. What do we have? What was that from? I can't even remember.
You're not like wearing bell bottoms to work or anything.
Quit it. Would you stop it? You just picking on me again. Yeah, I'm trying to think who I had that from. I'll have to think that over in just a second because I put that in there. It is from an earlier time.
Yes.
But we flick those
last century, Gary.
Brian lets me throw those in every now and then. Because there is some coolness left around in the world, and not that. Anyway, you wrote this article in the Boston Herald. I'm saying all these nice things about you, and you're tormenting me here to start the show.
I'm sorry, man. I'm trying to get back at you for sending me that fruitcake again this year.
Well, just think of it this way: you could use it as a hammer. So there you go. It'll work well.
A boat anchor.
It'll work well. Hey, you've kept your eye on China. I know you keep your eye on a lot of what's going on around the world, but China is still. It's like that thorn that you can't get out. It doesn't quite come out too well, does it?
Yeah, well, it's an underreported story. I mean, there is so much going on in the world. In fact, today I'm working on a piece on this Iran-Saudi Arabia thing. But I sit on this congressional commission on China, and we put out this annual report every year, and it's got a lot of good stuff in it. I wanted to bring some attention to that on the security side. And I think I actually wrote a column similar to this last year because I still think this Chinese military buildup is one of the biggest underreported stories of the year. And I don't think people are ignoring it. I think there's just so much else going on. I mean, think about what's going on in the Middle East. Think about, what Russia's doing and things like that. But
forget a 3-ring circus. It's like a 12-ring circus going on around the world right now.
Right. So, and you can't cover everything. There's only 24 hours in a day. There's only 3 hours in your show. I mean, you just can't do it all. And there's a lot of other important issues going on that aren't even foreign policy. So I wanted to draw some attention to that. I mean, for people to think about. I mean, you and I have talked about on your show about the South China Sea and other things, but there's a lot going on with China's, security buildup, and I think it's the biggest strategic threat we face in this century. Now, when I say strategic, it's important. I'm not dismissing terrorism, but I don't think that ISIS is ever going to be able to bring down the U.S. government or conquer the United States. Now, I'm not saying China's going to either, but, as a nuclear power, as a major military power, they're falling in the category like Russia as another nation state that's potentially a major threat to at least American interests. Maybe not the homeland where they are because they have nuclear weapons, but I mean, in that respect. So it's a strategic threat with tremendous powers well beyond anything that ISIS or the Islamic State could muster. So
you mentioned in your article how we've been preeminent in the Pacific for a long time, but you talk about China, and you think of how much debt we owe to China. For example, China is awash right now in cash, and that's one of the things that allows them to go out there. And you mentioned in your article about building up a lot of this high-tech military and defense kind of stuff that is needed for the country. Yeah,
for many years, I served in the Pacific when I was in the Navy, and we were challenged a bit by the Soviets. But I mean, since the end of the Cold War, the Pacific, for 20-some years now, has been an American lake in terms of naval forces and air forces and things along that line. China's challenging that. I mean, Gary, we talk about our defense budget. We have a big defense budget, and it's hard to actually equate defense budgets between countries because of the cost of things and along that line and convertibility. The Chinese currency isn't completely convertible, but they've been involved in having a 10% growth, at least 10%, double-digit growth for 25 years now in the defense budget. And it's not just, it started at a very low level. China wasn't very capable, but they're developing a very capable military. And all that money, remember, China is basically a statist economy. It's not a private sector. So a lot of the money that goes to China for goods that we and others buy is put back into the military. Beyond the issue of cyber espionage, where they're stealing all this high technology, China is developing a world-class military. And a couple other things I point out in there, for instance, most people don't realize this, is that China is now a top civilian or military space power with 150 satellites in space.
Yeah, that's amazing. I would have never known that many were up there from the Chinese.
They sent stuff to the moon.
Yeah.
They're called taikonauts. You have cosmonauts and astronauts. They're called taikonauts. They've sent things to the moon. They're planning on sending stuff to Mars. And it's also a lot of it's for military purposes. It's not just, civilian satellites. There's no real difference in China, there's no difference between the civilian and military space program. It's the same thing. Here we have NASA, and of course we have military national security elements of our space program. But in China, there's no difference at all. It's the same organization. And the other thing that's troubling is because we are very dependent on satellites for all sorts of stuff, everything from ATM transfers to collecting intelligence, that China is now able to target all of our satellites in space. And that includes low Earth orbit and geosynchronous. So anywhere these satellites lie, or low Earth orbit means that they circle the Earth. They move around the Earth. Geosynchronous says they're over one particular position. They don't move. They're that far above.
This is like James Bond stuff here with the anti-satellite kind of thing.
It's going on.
Yeah, it's happening.
That's the thing, and people don't realize it because it's going out there. So if we come to blows with China, they can target all of these satellites, and they know it's an Achilles heel, just like cyber is for us. Think about when you have bad weather and the electricity goes out, or you lose your internet or something like that, and you feel like you can't do anything. Well, satellites actually are part of that, too, because they are important for communications and other things, and they carry, like I said, everything from ATM transfers. Not all ATM transfers go by satellite, but they can. So there's a tremendous amount of things, and China's able to do that. So they're able to hold U.S. satellites at risk in every orbit up there.
Do we have that same ability, by the way, Peter?
We have a limited ability in that respect. There's a lot of controversy, Gary, and this is a big discussion to have in a short time, but there's a lot of discussion about the militarization of space.
Right.
It's one of those sort of things. It's like militarizing the Arctic. Countries have decided that now there's very few countries that are actually would be able to militarize space anyway. Russia, the United States, China are probably the only three. Maybe some others in a limited respect. But it's like Antarctica. They've kind of said, hey, look, this is going to be, mankind's common heritage, a global commons, and we're not going to militarize.
Kind of just off limits.
And but that's the question. And the thing is, the Chinese can do. There's a couple of things they're working on, and people should. Now, this book is a 600-page volume of economic and security issues, and it's available at uscc.gov, USChinaCommission.gov. So, if they want to get more into this, I'm just giving you an overview here of a couple of issues.
And again, to give you full cred here, you're part of that commission.
Yeah, I'm part of the bipartisan commission.
Right.
There's 12 of us who are appointed by the two senior leaders in the House and the Senate, and we put this. It's a bipartisan report, so it's not one side or the other.
Right.
And I don't agree with everything that's in the report, nor does everybody else, because we're 12 different people with different views. But we do come up with this report, and I think it's quite sober. The interesting thing, let me say this another thing about the satellites, Gary, is that there's ways of targeting satellites. You can do it from land, in other words, from the Earth. You can send up a rocket to knock them down. And the Chinese are also developing co-orbital attack satellites.
Wow.
That are put into orbit and will ram or laser or grab physically other satellites to put them out of commission. So there's a lot of James Bondy
Star Wars
stuff going on out there. And a lot of it is, this is all unclassified stuff, so there's probably a lot of stuff that I don't know about that's going on in the classified world. So this is something people are thinking about, just like cyber, kind of snuck up on people. People are like, oh, yeah, I got my internet, I got my Facebook, I got my Twitter, I'm, fat, dumb, and happy here with all of this sort of stuff, and all of a sudden somebody's stealing your credit card, right?
Right.
Well, the states are doing the same sort of thing. They're stealing secrets from other countries. They're also stealing technologies from businesses and things along that, and China's one of the biggest offenders of that. So these are two cutting edges of military capabilities, military science, military doctrine is space and cyber.
You also mentioned in your report about the ICBMs and the nuclear force that's out there right now at sea. Tell us about that.
Well, the United States has long had a nuclear triad, a three-legged stool for our nuclear deterrent, where land-based silos, bombers that could carry nuclear weapons, and of course our submarines that go to sea and fleet ballistic missile submarines. And you probably have some listeners there who have even served on those sort of submarines. Well, the Chinese have long had a limited deterrent in land-based silos, and now they're starting to send their nuclear deterrent to sea, which is changing things. And they're also developing bombers that will be able to carry weapons as well. So they're really stepping up their strategic capabilities. And will be, they plan to challenge the United States and be as capable as the United States in terms of this. They're also very capable in ballistic missiles. We're not too much in the short-range ballistic missile business because of some treaties we had with Russia from the Cold War. The Chinese have filled in there. They threaten our bases in the Pacific. They have the capability to threaten our bases with ballistic missiles. They also have developed the world's first anti-ship ballistic missile. Now, I realize some of your listeners will understand that. Some of them may not be too technical and may not understand it. But basically what they've done is they've developed a relatively cheap ballistic missile that can be fired at a moving object, which is not what ballistic missiles are normally used for. They're usually used to target fixed targets.
Well, and they're designed, from what I saw, they're designed to actually drop U.S. aircraft carriers, right?
To sink them. In fact, the U.S. analysts call them carrier killers.
Wow.
So this is a technology we don't even have. And they've developed. So they're developing pockets of excellence. They're also developing lots of modern ships. I mean, they're not as capable as ours. They're not, their sailors, their airmen, Marines, and military aren't as good as ours, but they're working on it, and they're working on it really hard. They want to be like number one, and that's us. So they're watching us very closely. They're trying to develop these things. And in some areas, they're looking for asymmetric capabilities. In other words, where's America's weakness? If a boxer, is susceptible to a right hook, his opponent's going to be watching the films, or a football team, if they see that you can run around their end of their defensive line, you're going to do these things. So what you do is you develop an asymmetric strategy. Instead of going strength on strength, you can go against their weaknesses, and that's what the Chinese are doing. But they're also developing things where they're going strength on strength, where they're developing aircraft carriers. And actually, since I wrote this article, China had sent their first aircraft carrier to sea. The Chinese have announced in the last few days that they're building their second, and I think they're building more than that as well. So they're going to go against strength on strength. They're going to develop an aircraft carrier force to promote and advance their interests in at sea. China used to have a navy that was just basically coastal.
Yeah.
Now they're going with a blue water navy, and they're going to challenge the United States and the Japanese and other countries out there. The Russians don't have the biggest presence in the Pacific like they used to, for dominance over the Pacific Ocean.
You also have them being the third largest arms exporter after the United States and Russia right now too, which so they're selling more advanced weapon systems.
Well, that
than they've
money's
done
going
before.
into their defense industrial complex. So there's a lot of things to be thinking about. I just wanted to bring people's attention to it because it's not ISIS, but it's important.
Well, Peter, it's certainly on your radar. It's hopefully on a lot of other people's radar. We're going to put this up on Facebook.com/910WSBA for tomorrow. I'm glad you like my Tower of Power music, but they're still
keeping
playing.
You on your toes.
They're still playing, man. I still like Earth, Wind, and Fire in Chicago too. But
man, I'm from Washington. I'm here to help.
I know. Yeah, anyway, hey, Peter Brooks with us here this morning. Hey, Peter, I'm looking forward to talking to you again very soon.
All right, man.
Happy New Year,
Happy New Year.
Take care, buddy.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Peter Brooks here on the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA, and he's keeping his eye on China. We'll put that up again tomorrow in case you didn't get all that. He laid out quite a few things here China is actually doing right now, and it's important for us not to take our eye off some of the many balls that are being juggled right now in the world.